Hello, Newman. It's Mr. Bell here with drawing activity number 14. Today is October 12th, and today's activity is called Skin and Clothes. That's S-K-I-N, skin, A-N-D, and clothes, C-L-O-T-H-E-S, clothes. So as the title says, we're going to start adding clothes and skin to these figures. So for today, all you need to have is one figure. You can use sausage technique. You can use really any technique. There's a whole bunch of different techniques. I used a completely different one this time, kind of using more angular shapes this time. But you get the point. This proportion, these ideas of how far these things are apart from each other, holds true with any of these different techniques we have to make things like this. I did illustrate this arrow, just kind of pointing out that when we tend to move orientated towards the curvature of our spine. So this line kind of follows from that line around the spine, which would be this one, how it goes all the way to the top of the head, and then it kind of follows course with how the legs move too. We always need to orientate this curve towards right here, which is where most of our centers of gravity actually are. So anyways, we're done with figuring out these proportions. I think that you guys hopefully kind of get it by now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put clothing on this person and maybe some skin. I'm not going to ignore the face. I am going to illustrate this curve in the middle. Goes along with this. So this person is following their curvature of their spine, and they're kind of looking maybe downwards and kind of directly at the viewer at the same time. This is something that's really hard to do, and this is something that there really isn't a right way to do this. This body proportion stuff, this is kind of the science of how to draw a person. And now this part is kind of where that creativity comes from. So this is where you're going to decide the body type of this person. You're going to decide probably the gender of this person. It's more than just the proportions and how that body moves. That's the basics for it, but now it's time to get creative. You got to imagine some stuff, like maybe his waist isn't right here, or her waist. I haven't decided if it's going to be man or woman yet. It's not really going to be orientated this, like where the pants are. The pants maybe would go, so from right here to maybe around here. For you guys, remember, it's okay if you can see the structure below, but you want to be using very light pencil strokes to draw this guy in. You don't want him to be visible as you start drawing in. You're going to want to get rid of these lines because you wouldn't really see him. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to draw in his pants where I think they would be. I'm going to make this a man. And I'm going to just use my imagination. Again, if you don't do it the way I do it, awesome. Do it your own way. I'd much rather you find your own way to do this. So I'm going to sketch in his pants. I think he's just going to be wearing regular old jeans. So really right now I'm just kind of sketching out where I think those lines would be on the outside. So this is where his knee is. Usually there's a little bend in the fabric there. Just kind of sketching this out. These lines may or may not stay when I finalize this guy. That's why I'm using very light pencil strokes too, because I don't know if I want to keep these or not. I think that's about where his pants are. And all the parts that clothing would cover, you don't really need to worry about the skin underneath, because you can kind of create that fabric or whatever that garment is made out of. You can kind of illustrate it as the skin, right? Because you're not really seeing the person's skin, so treat the pants kind of like as a skin. So I know that since his leg is like this, it's going out to the side. The fabric on his pants would probably drape down and be tighter on like the calf area where this would be. So I'm going to try to illustrate that and think about gravity pulling these pants down a little bit. So I think they'd stretch out to maybe there. But then his calf muscle would be here. So I'm going to try to follow that line of the calf. I think that's going to be a little thick. And again, these are really just rough sketch lines. This is probably not the lines that I'm ultimately going to keep with this drawing. What we're working on right now is just getting those rough sketches out. We are going to spend one more day finishing out these sketches and making them look a lot better and a lot more realistic. But right now, we're really just working on the basic lines of where your person's clothes are and where their skin is that's going to be showing. I'm going to illustrate this guy. I think he's just going to have like boots, kind of plain Jane, maybe like combat boots almost. Then I'm going to just really briefly, I'm going to illustrate this with just some cross hatches where the laces would be. Maybe divide where the heel would be. Just a basic hint of what he's wearing. His other shoes just going to be kind of pointing down there. And looking at my proportions, that's way too big. I got confused because I draped his pants down a little bit. Maybe that's where his boot would be. And then you got to draw his heel. I think that's a little long again. You get the general idea. I am going to draw in his shirt really quick. And again, we're not getting this guy to the point where you think this looks finalized. This is a general sketch of where you think things are going to want to end up being. And again, we are going to revisit this. So that's where his wrist is. I think that's where I'm going to put his shirt. Make this arm a little curvier. I think he's going to be wearing like maybe like a button-down type shirt. Illustrate where the collar is going to be. Where his shirt is going to ultimately be. Again, I don't think I'm going to keep a lot of these lines. As I look at this, some of it looks pretty accurate and some of it doesn't. And a lot of that is finding where those mistakes are, which involves sometimes kind of drawing out the whole thing and then blending it and going back. Or at least that's one of the big ways that I draw. So looking at this guy, thinking about how his hand would be, his thumb would be out there. His fingers would be on the top. Thinking about those proportions, but not really worrying about them overly. We can really flesh this hand out and make it look a lot more realistic after we get the basic idea of where this guy's stuff is. Maybe illustrate that. I'm going to put a little pocket here just to remind me that's where the pocket's going to go. So, you know, I'm working on some details, but like I think he's going to have a big old Kansas, like Texas style buckle. I don't know why I'm thinking about that for this guy. For some reason, I'm thinking maybe he's a cowboy all of a sudden. So I'm going to put in like those details, but right now it's okay that you can't necessarily see them all. Remember, again, we're going on a basic sketch. Don't worry about if this doesn't look perfect to you. This is about, again, just kind of imagining where it is, playing around with it. Kind of, you know, this is very much practice still. I am going to flesh this guy's a little bit out more, but I don't want to waste any more time in class. So I'm going to call this guy good for now. Again, in the next drawing activity, we will be revisiting these same drawings.